The following comments were pulled from the Easy Allies Patreon page among our $10 and above patrons. They represent what our community was playing and talking about in November. Final Fantasy XV is upon us, and it feels like a life-changing event where I can finally move on from the past stench of Final Fantasy XIII. I'm hopeful this turns out well for the future of Square and all of Final Fantasy. Now to wait on my dream game from childhood, Final Fantasy VII Remake. By the time the video goes up, I shall be stuck between Final Fantasy XV and Yakuza 6. One I've been waiting 10 years for, and the other I'm pretty sure will leave me crying like a little baby if Kiryu dies. Brandon, I just want to say I'm sorry for making you say PSO2 like 30 times. Huge PSO fan, and I've been eagerly awaiting PSO2 getting a Western release since Sega announced it almost 4 years ago. PSO has been a huge part of me, my brother, and our cousin's life. Between the three of us, we probably logged 1,200 hours into PSO. The three of us have many memories tied to PSO, so it's a little hard for me not to get a little overexcited about a proper Western release of PSO2. Also, just some quick thoughts on the Switch. I'm hoping for it to be a success. I've always seen people talking about how Nintendo should go third-party, and I've never understood why. To me, Nintendo going full third-party would be like Disney shutting down and deciding they weren't making movies or running theme parks anymore. With that said, I do feel a bit burned by the Wii U, regardless of the awesome games released on it. So here's hoping that the Switch has an awesome launch lineup, along with some awesome first and third-party games released within the first 6 months that really sell the system. Am I the only one who foresees some kind of auto accident from someone playing Skyrim or Super Mario Switch while driving? November for myself, and I'm sure for many others, is simply the get through as much of the backlog as I can before Final Fantasy XV and Last Guardian come out month. I feel like this is the last chance to play through any minor games before this gen really steps on the gas and goes full throttle 2017. Gravity Rush 2, Yakuza 0, Kingdom Hearts 2.8, Resident Evil 7, Horizon Zero Dawn, For Honor, Persona 5, and Neo all drop between January and March. What a hype train, and that's to say nothing of the Nintendo Switch. It's November 14th. There's already Christmas music playing in my store. There's a solid chance I'm going to go insane before the end of the year. If I make it to the other side, it'll be because the allies and this amazing community helped me make it through. Also, if Last Guardian and Final Fantasy XV are bad, I'll definitely lose it. Love and respect to all of you. Final Fantasy XV is out. Last Guardian is coming soon. Weeping in joy. I recently made the switch from non-patron to a patron of Easy Allies. With Tabletop Escapades, the weekly podcast, Frame Trap, Tuesday's group stream, Fiasco Knots, Huber Syndrome, Easy Update, and the occasional solo stream, that's a lot of hours of entertainment. And the least I could do was support you all for the price of a Netflix subscription. So, thank you. Watching your streams has made me want to start streaming. I love gaming, but I tend to let it fall by the wayside. Streaming feels like it could be a way to get myself to play more. However, with Final Fantasy XV coming out in a couple of weeks, I don't think I'll be having that problem for a while. While its hybrid nature and even general layout had been leaked, I'm still pleasantly surprised by the Switch. Nintendo going full Nintendo? It's a great thing. I'm going on a world trip in the following year, and the Nintendo Switch is the perfect console to take on the trip. Let's just hope it won't be delayed, because I'm starting in April. And please give me region-free Nintendo. Please. With the release of the Mini NES, I've seen many recent headlines and conversations about creating a list of what we want for the supposedly inevitable Mini Super NES. But I think everyone needs to temper their expectations about the possibility of Nintendo creating such a device. Remember when NES Remix was released on Wii U, and everyone was talking about what Nintendo would do for Super NES Remix? Yeah, still waiting on that one, many years later. I also wanted to remind everyone not to let the thrill of nostalgia and novelty cloud your judgment. I too grew up in the Nintendo Entertainment System, but most of those 30 games included on the Mini NES sadly do not hold up very well at all. I understand the allure of convenience, but honestly, how much do you really want to play these games? The truth is, the 16-bit generation was a huge jump in quality, but don't expect a Mini Super NES. Nintendo seems to be much better at giving us what we don't know we want, like Splatoon, rather than what we obviously want. And I have to give them credit for that. I never felt any interest in Danganronpa when the first game reached the US in 2014, but 2 years of glowing write-ups on the internet and my Vita backlog progressively dwindling finally led me to pick up the nonsensically titled game. I started it up in October with my expectations set low for what I expected would be a stupidly weird story full of dumb anime tropes and minimal gameplay. So of course, I wound up falling deeply in love with the strange characters, the engrossing murder mysteries, the complicated logic puzzles, and the action-style minigames that fill every tense trial sequence. I spent all of November tearing through the game's sequel, then doubling back to complete all of the extra game modes in both titles. As I type this, I'm listening to the writer of the series explain how he made the characters and scenarios so incredibly engaging. Soon, I'll be on to another episode, and I've already begun watching the franchise's anime adaptations. In short, October and November are the months when I transformed from a guy who primarily plays third-person action games into someone obsessed with a monochromatic animatronic bear and his sick world of murder and deceit. It all sounds wrong when I try to explain it out loud, but it feels so right. After replaying the first 3 Mass Effect games on PC over September and October, and from watching the N7 Day trailer and the information that's followed, I can't help but feel my hype for Andromeda has dipped. Mass Effect has become one of my favorite video game franchises, only behind Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts. While I really enjoyed going back through the franchise again, none of my opinions of the games have really changed since I first played them. I love the first game story, despite the terrible Mako driving and dated gameplay. Mass Effect 2 refined the gameplay and introduced the brilliant loyalty missions, but the overarching story to me was lacking. The Collectors weren't the best villains, and lacked what made Saren a great foil for Shepard. And the less said about Mass Effect 3's ending, the better. It was so bad my brother refused to go back and play the games again. The Citadel DLC slightly made up for it though. I had so much fun for those couple of hours. I think the problem I'm having with Andromeda is the apparent lack of innovation on display. Nothing with Andromeda seems new, groundbreaking, or truly innovative. I expect it to be a very good video game, but that's it. I know not everything has to change the face of video games forever, and refinement worked for Mass Effect 2, but having waited since 2012 for another Mass Effect game, it'd be nice to get something from BioWare that inspires people, and gives people hope that BioWare can still make great games. Despite all my negativity, I fully expect to purchase Mass Effect Andromeda at the first opportunity, and I know I will probably have a great time with it. But it won't be a priority for when it's supposed to come out in March. Sorry, writer, but I think I'll be traveling with Sora, Donald, and Goofy with all the Kingdom Hearts remasters before zooming off to Andromeda. Oh, Battlefield 1, how I do love you. I had an experience where I was prone, looking out a doorway of a nice European home, aiming down my sights and waiting anxiously for an enemy to come across. After camping for a good couple of minutes, I stood up, stopped looking down my barrel to find out the house was destroyed. I had no clue that the whole time I was focused on this doorway that a tank had destroyed the house and I was out in the open. Well played, Battlefield. Easy Allies is better than Shrek. I'm one of those people who end up buying every competitive FPS release, no matter how much I claimed the year before that I won't do it. However, this year, I'm so glad I did. Titanfall 2 has been the best competitive game I've played all year. Yes, that includes Overwatch. I desperately wish Infinity Ward hadn't lost those incredibly talented developers so that they'd still be making great COD releases like Modern Warfare 2. And of course, I encourage everyone, regardless of platform, to give this game a shot. You'll really be surprised at how polished and balanced this game is. It has been a year and a half, but the episodic King's Quest game has finished its run. All 5 chapters had a nice charm to them. All the elements that went into making the series, I felt, really created something special. Now, I never played any of the previous King's Quest games, so take what I say with a grain of salt, but I don't think any of the chapters lived up to the caliber of the first installment of this series. That isn't to say that the others weren't enjoyable, because they absolutely were, but the thrill of going into the well, exploring the cave for the first time, learning the mechanics as well as how the game wanted you to think, and that first decision you had to make were also captivating. I give the series props for trying new things each chapter and even setting different tones. It was nice to see a game willing to take risks. The ending was really well done. I won't go into detail because I think for those listening to this that haven't played, go in and experience the story without reading what happens. It's worth it. The art, the music, and overall environment is just something you can easily get enthralled in. If you like adventure and are just in the mood for something quaint and fun, do yourself a favor and check King's Quest out. I rarely go back to games once I complete them, but I can easily see myself donning the feathered cap at least once again to relive this pleasant adventure. I'm putting it out there, Super Mario Sunshine is the best 3D Mario game. It might have its occasional niggle, but no other Mario game has offered such a unique, diverse, and consistent world for you to play around in. I'm surprised I never hear Kyle Bossman talk about it because, as far as I'm concerned, Sunshine is the god of context. Every platform is connected to something. Every surface serves a purpose that makes sense within the game world, whether it's the roof of someone's house or a platform to transport goods across a harbor. Isle Delfino has its own history and culture, is packed with secrets, and has 100% control over its own vibe. You can even see the other levels in the distance. Aside from a few parts of Galaxy, it was the last Mario game to have any kind of meaningful exploration. Not to mention Mario having his most versatile moveset. 3D World was fun, but it all felt so cold and calculated to me, like they cared more about having the platforms be the right length apart and putting the green stars in the right location than letting the player go on an adventure in an exciting new world. It just didn't have as much personality, and that's something I've noticed in a lot of Nintendo games these past few years. Even Luigi's Mansion 2 felt like a clinical, factory-processed version of the original. I hate to bring negativity into a community event like this, but I have to be honest. I've played through most of Owlboy, and I think I'm ready to give up on it. With the exception of the visuals, which incorporate absurdly high-detail pixel art, creative and stylish character designs, and wonderfully fluid animation, every aspect of this game is simplistic and dull to me. The story is your standard underdog tale, played completely straight, and acted out by similarly dull and simplistic character archetypes. The gameplay, which consists of puzzles and dual-stick shooter combat, is practically mindless in its simplicity, and approaches annoying far more than it does challenging. Even the music, while quite well produced, is the sort of generic score you might find in any early to mid-2000s adventure film. Everything here just feels devoid of that spark of creativity and ingenuity that we've come to align with the best of indie games, and it's truly disappointing. Owlboy took 9 years to make, and you would hope that a game with so much work clearly put into its creation and aesthetic would showcase a similar degree of talent in the other areas of its design. I am more excited for a Pokemon game than I have been in quite some time. I had all but lost interest in the franchise when Brandon Plays Pokemon rekindled my enthusiasm. I'm actually less excited about the game itself than I am for getting to experience a Pokemon game for the first time along with Brandon and Kyle. Thank you guys for bringing me back to one of the brightest spots of my childhood. The Pokemon Sun and Moon hype is real. In preparation of celebrating 20 years of Pokemon, I've been playing Pokemon Yellow to look back on how far the series has come. I can't wait to see what the future has in store for the Pokemon franchise. My PS4 Pro arrived in the mail recently, and I have to say, it feels good to finally receive the title of professional gamer. I've dedicated many hours of my life to gaming with only one goal in mind: to call myself a pro in front of the bathroom mirror and actually convince myself that this is true. Once I got my PS4 Pro set up, it dawned on me that I needed to transfer all of my game data over from my PS4 Amateur. I did this with relative ease. I am a pro after all. While the data was transferring, it dawned on me that the PT demo might not come over. This made me a little nervous, as I have plans to sell my PS4 Amateur. Thankfully, the demo came over without a problem. I got so excited about it, I decided to play through it again for what must be the 50th time. Then I realized that I've never experienced the demo with the PSVR headset, so I strapped that puppy onto my professional-shaped head, set the screen size to ginormous, and jumped in. Holy crap, you must do this if you have a PSVR headset and PT. It felt like I was actually occupying space in that panic-inducing hallway. Also, I think I may have stumbled into the solution for VR sickness. Quite simply, don't use head movement as the right analog stick. Just leave the first-person shooter controls the way they are. I still feel like I'm there, and I won't have to aim a gun with my face. Pros don't aim guns with their faces. This month, I will receive my first ever Kickstarter video game. Just the idea of the game seemed awesome. It's a game based on a fantasy book series called The Dwarves. I like dwarves, so I pledged money and then started to wonder what these books were about. I backed the game just because of the title. Maybe that was bad, so I decided to read the books. I'm not a big reader, but I totally devoured the books, so maybe more books should be made into games. The coolest thing is that they got the author on board to write new heroes and quests for the game that aren't in the book. Also, what happened to couch co-op for story? It's one of the best gaming modes ever. Have a friend over, have some pizza and a couple of beers, and dive headfirst into a whole new universe together. At the moment of Ben and Brandon reading this, we will be closer to Christmas than we are to Halloween. Life got in the way of me beating the game in time for the October comments, but I hope the allies indulge this late submit. Also, Michael Patrick Huber, this one's for you. After 6 years sitting in the shelf and moving slowly but surely in my queue, this October, Resident Evil Archives, Resident Evil, finally got its time in the spotlight. The beginning minutes were very confusing, not knowing what to do and getting used to the infamous tank controls was disorienting. But just like riding a bike, it became second nature after a while. I can't even describe how much I enjoyed this game. The labyrinth-like mansion with locked doors and undead menaces is the perfect setting for horror. I guess that is no secret. It's a game about exploring, getting to know the environment, and then relearning it all over again when a new threat arises. I even liked having limited saves throughout the game. Just like Huber said in a recent podcast, it adds to the fear and survival. To me, it felt like the ultimate way of respecting the player. You want to use the last charge of your ink ribbon just prior to a boss fight? Okay, you know the stakes by now, and that you may regret this decision. Working on my backlog, I started and finished the fabulous game 999, 9 Hours, 9 Persons, 9 Doors for the DS this month. I have never experienced a game before in which the new Game Plus mechanic tied so nicely into the game's story. Next up, Virtue's Last Reward. For me personally, this year's November was not a great month for long gaming sessions. My work kept me quite busy throughout the week, and the weekends were mostly spent with friends and family. As a consequence, I want to use Brandon's voice to highlight 2 smaller games that I thoroughly enjoyed in my little spare time, and that I want to recommend to everyone who needs something small for one evening or weekend. The first game is Portal Stories VR, which, as the name suggests, is a VR title for the Vive that is set in the Portal universe. The game itself can be finished in way under an hour, since it has just 10 levels, but it's hard to complain about length since you can get it for free on Steam. And in my point of view, the game clearly shows how a puzzle adventure like Portal can and should work in VR. Trying to solve a laser puzzle while crouching behind cover because you're shot by turrets is maybe one of the most engaging experiences I had using the Vive. Even more fascinating is the fact that the game is not made by Valve itself, but by a small indie studio that simply modded the original Portal 2 and created something that lends itself perfectly for VR. So, Gabe Newell, if you're watching this video, and I know you are, and want a game to sell more Vive hardware, make Portal 3 a VR exclusive. It's as easy as that. The second game that I'm highlighting is Jotun in its Valhalla edition. One way to describe the game is to call it a beautiful mixture of Shadow of the Colossus and Dark Souls gameplay, combined with a Banner Saga-like gorgeous art style in an isometric perspective. You play as recently deceased Viking women who must impress the gods to enter Valhalla, also known as Michael Huber's dream scenario. I backed the game on Kickstarter over 2 years ago because I simply liked the beautiful design of the world and the idea of fighting Jotunmen, which are more or less Viking demigods. What I did not expect from the game was the fact that it oozes with deep Viking lore and introductions of the Viking mythology. The game has some minor flaws. Combat is a bit slow at times since you're wielding a heavy axe, and the difficulty of the last boss is too high compared to the other bosses. But if you fancy a challenging game, it is nothing to worry about. Even though I already mentioned it twice, I want to emphasize the stunning art style of the game and the way they present larger areas. Every area looks stunning and has a distinct look and feel that perfectly fits to the bosses residing in that area. In my humble opinion, the game is an absolutely perfect fit for a weekend of Advent. The Game Awards and the PSX Keynote were pretty good for the most part, as the announcements and reveals really jumped out. Kojima giving a new Death Stranding trailer, the awesome performance of the Doom soundtrack, the announcement of Uncharted: The Lost Legacy, the reveal of Crash Bandicoot Modernized, and of course, the best moment of the week, The Last of Us Part 2. I love press conferences and gaming shows, and Sony seems to be on point with their presentations as of late, but I do have one concern. Constantly announcing new projects while the release schedule is pretty light. Sure, The Last Guardian just came out, but between Days Gone, God of War, Spider-Man, GT Sport, Detroit Become Human, Dreams, Death Stranding, and The Last of Us Part 2, there seems to be very little in the way of getting games out, with Horizon Zero Dawn being up next in February. Not to mention the other massive third-party multi-platform games in development: Shenmue 3, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Kingdom Hearts 3, Mass Effect Andromeda, Prey, and EA Star Wars portfolio, the former 3 being announced on a Sony stage. While it's totally okay not having a specific release date, I find it odd so many projects are in the works, but with a couple of expectations, we have no details. Don't get me wrong, I am hyped for most of the games I just gave, but it feels weird to me. But on the bright side, we now live in a world where Final Fantasy XV and The Last Guardian are games that people have played. Dreams can, have, and will come true. Tyranny, the latest game from Obsidian Entertainment, was released this month, and it's fun playing an RPG where your character is firmly on the side of evil, due to being a minion of a mysterious evil overlord. Tyranny is a game that makes being bad feel good. This year has been amazing for games, and these past few months specifically. Titanfall 2 is the most fun I've had with a first-person game since Portal 2. The idea of making the switch is the most optimistic I've been about Nintendo in years, and emerging details about games like Red Dead and Mass Effect have me salivating over what's around the corner. Still, looking back on the year between playing and watching others play, there's one game that stands out head and shoulders above the rest as far as entertainment and enjoyment: Hitman. Holy crap, you guys, Hitman. It's packed with detail and context to an unbelievable level, and it's immediately obvious how much love and pride went into making every piece of it. The episodes are varied and smartly designed as both scenes and puzzles. For as much as there is, it really doesn't feel like any part of it is filler, and no game nails the sense of accomplishment the way Hitman does when the music starts blaring as you coolly make your way to an escape after a successful mission. Hitman is GOATY. Here is another nostalgia game that has been on my mind lately. Last time was Freedom Fighters. Timesplitters, but more specifically, Timesplitters Future Perfect, the third and last game in the franchise. This game, like so many others, was critically acclaimed by many, but was sadly ignored and forgotten in the gaming world. A game truly ahead of its time, but sadly, we may never see another game like it. I could go on forever about how this game should be held as one of the best multiplayer games of the PS2 era, for both locally and online, but instead, I'll focus on just a few points that will hopefully convince at least one person to pick this up sometime in the near future. Firstly, there's a single-player campaign that is both incredibly fun, unique on many fronts, for its time, and can be quite challenging. Not to mention, it is filled with jokes, puns, and parodies of all kinds. Secondly, there are 150 playable characters, 43 weapons including old western types to sci-fi shooters, as well as a few ridiculous weapons like the monkey gun, 13 game modes, and 15 maps. Lastly, it contains an awesome map editor. All in all, if you get the opportunity, for the love of God, please do yourself a favor and pick up a copy of Timesplitters Future Perfect. Just a side note, there are some indie developers who have been working on a game called Timesplitters Rewind. Check out their Facebook page and show your support. Brandon, you will not pick this comment for the monthly video, but I just want to let you know, your cup of Jones about love and respect is the best piece of content you've ever produced. I just wanted to direct some attention to the great topic Exist to Inspire created over in the forums, the EZA Community Top 100, well worth checking out to get an idea of what this community is interested in. I want to second Tim O'Keefe's comments. The EZA Top 100 Games is my favorite thread on Easy Allies. A huge shout out and love and respect to Exist to Inspire for putting in the time and effort to make this possible. Hopefully, more allies will take part in the next Top 100 list, whatever it turns out to be. Ian Hink Credible. Your first fiasco adventure at GT with Ben, Kyle, and Hubert is one of the best radio dramas I have heard. It was crazy. Then came Fiasco Knots. I love your cast. I have never expected Brandon Jones to be in character in this show, but I hope I can hear his lady character voice when he chooses to be a female character. Still waiting for Fiasco Knots to be available in SoundCloud, so I can listen everywhere and anytime. I do hope Amanda Troop will be a guest cast. I am sure it will be amazing. I was listening to the soundtrack of some of the Hayao Miyazaki films composed by the venerable Joe Hisashi, and man, these tracks take you places. I'm talking about making your heart swell and feeling that your soul rises and flies, like an awe-inspiring white dragon in the sky, even if you're in a dark and dreary crowded subway. I wanted to share this with my fellow allies. It's really one of those cases where the music elevates something that was already great to unimaginable highs. I just wish somehow there'd be a feature in film to adjust the audio levels like video games do, so I could watch Castle in the Sky with the music to 100. Just wanted to know how you felt reacted the first time a fan expressed how you'd change their lives for the better. I'd most definitely assume this has happened to each of you on multiple occasions, and can attest that you have all made my life a whole lot jollier. Love and respect, forever. I really appreciate the way y'all stream. I'm 32, I'm a teacher, I'm around teenagers all day long, so your tempered commentary is exactly the kind of Let's Play viewing experience I enjoy at the end of the day. Thank you. This month I've been playing so much Civ 6 and Skyrim HD. Civ was a gift from my husband, and the weekend after it came out, he and I played for maybe 6 or 8 hours. I only ever get one full dedicated day a week to gaming, and it has been a pleasure sinking all of my time into these two games. If I could borrow $1 and it wouldn't be a bother, I would bide my time to get in line for the games which have the names of some of the greats that are appearing this year very late. November, December, and really since September, many titles being, and to be seen, are really raising the quality mean. Despite the lack of time and the terrible rhymes, I hope no one minds that The Last Guardian should be prime in everyone's minds. Love and respect. Hey, EZA.